In Acts 18:21, we see Paul saying, I'm going to take leave of some of the brethren. I'm going to head towards Jerusalem because he had taken a vow. He says, I'm also going to keep the feast. Now, the translators added in this word Jerusalem here, but he's taking leave of these people and headed somewhere. Well, where did they have to go to pay their vow offerings? Jerusalem. And we see later in Acts 21 that in fact he ended up in Jerusalem, not only to pay this vow, but for the feast, right? This is what was happening right then. So he went to Jerusalem to pay his vow, but also keep the feast. This proves Paul was still doing sacrifices, obeying the Torah, not doing not modern Babylonian Christian ways, still doing the Torah, doing the ways of God, keeping the feast. He wasn't doing pagan holidays like Christmas and Easter. He was not saying anything against the law of Moses. In fact, then he would never have written to people in his letters telling them that following the feasts were the elementary principles or bad things or doctrines of demons if he himself was doing it. See, there's some misunderstanding of Paul's letters. So he's headed to Jerusalem as commanded to keep the feast. There was 3 feasts where you had to make pilgrim voyages. He was going to Jerusalem to pay his vow. He was still keeping the law. Now, remember, even though the word Jerusalem is not written, this is added in for clarification. They understood that to do the vows where the altar was and to do these feasts where the temple was Jerusalem. Let's keep going. Right here in Acts 21, that they said, Paul, go take this vow. This is the one that I believe that chapter 18 was referring to. He's on his way to Jerusalem to go pay the expenses and keep the feast. And it says, look, show that you yourself walk orderly and keep the law. See right here in verse 24? You yourself walk orderly and keep the law. Paul still kept the law. Now, concerning the Gentiles, they started with these 4 laws. These words here that no such thing except are added in. Those weren't the only 4 laws for Gentiles. They still have to honor their mother and father and whatnot. But these 4 laws from Leviticus 17 and 18 were necessary to enter the temple. And did you know this? We were told that Ananias was the man who gave Paul his sight, and he was a devout man according to the law. See, Ananias obeyed the law. Paul had been doing Judaism. He had to come out of Judaism, just go to Torah. Paul still kept the law. He taught to keep the law. He didn't go to Sunday church. He kept the biblical Sabbath, the biblical feasts, and he even went to Jerusalem to do so because they still had a temple. Beautiful stuff.